Hey gang, it's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's time for Humpday Happy Hour. So welcome to Humpday Happy Hour with Dentists in the Know. This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It's live, and as always, it's over a cocktail. I'm feeling like it's kind of a Sancerre kind of night. Getting a little bit warmer now, so getting ready to have some of those chilled wines again. Really excited about that. But as you know, we are here to bring all of you in the know. So as always, I am with some of my best friends in the entire world, Dr. Jennifer Bell and Dr. Chad Duplantis. As you all know, we're all educators, we are all dentists, and we're all practice owners. And as I said, our job is to bring all of you in the know. So how is it going, guys? I have an exciting thing to tell you about.
Ooh.
You do?
We have Ed Zuckerberg on the show. Dr. Ed Zuckerberg is joining us tonight. I'm excited about this.
I think that's going to be fantastic. I am so
I think
pumped.
so too. We'd like to welcome a new educational partner to Dentists in the Know. Shofu has joined us as an educational partner. And this is a company that both Chad and Jennifer and I have all worked with. And we're really excited for them to come on board and help us bring you great information. So thank you, Shofu.
All right, team. So let's get down to it. The news this week is sort of heavy and interesting, very nuanced, I would say. So a little statistically driven. I will post links because even I can't read through all this in just the short period of time that we have. So just trudge with me a bit lightly. Of course, we had the gentleman that made the news on every social media platform that I follow who decided to, well, it's alleged, so we're going to leave it at that, that he poisoned his wife. I will say, just as a PSA from your friendly dentist in the know, if you're looking to commit crimes, probably don't Google search them before you do it. But other than that, we're still operating in the alleged category. It's just newsworthy for this program because he happened to be a dentist. Now on to more interesting news, I think, that might apply to more folks. The first thing that I wanted to bring up tonight was to talk about a group that was together recently, the American Association of Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research, along with the Canadian Association of Dental Research. They were together in March, and they discussed the opioid prescription statistics currently related to dentists. Now, this has been a hot topic for several years, pre-pandemic, where many states started requiring different tracking mechanisms for your opioid prescription practices. They required educational practices within your scope, and that you had to perform a certain number of continuing education hours for opioid prescriptions each year. So a lot of things changed pre-pandemic related to the opioid crisis that the U.S. was facing. Interestingly enough, contrary to the original reporting where dentists were heavy contributors to the opioid prescriptions being given in the US, from 2015 to 2019, we saw a pretty big drop for most practitioners, reducing the number of opioid prescriptions. Now, there's a lot of statistics in this data, and I don't want to get into the weeds of the actual stats that they highlighted. What I think is fascinating, particularly as a prescriber, is that this group broke us up. They have enough of the statistics of your prescription practice, your prescription writing practices, that they broke up dentists into numerous categories based on the number of general prescriptions you're writing. So that can include antibiotics, muscle relaxers, sedation medications, etc., but it also includes opioids. So they broke up the general population of dentists who are prescribing prescriptions and then categorize them in statistical numbers that they were writing. And then of those heavy prescribers, medium prescribers, low prescribers, how many of those were opioids? They also looked at some of the niche markets where they were most concerned, I think, about the number of opioid prescriptions, and were trying to see if there had been a decrease in those prescriptions. a lot of heavy data in this particular press release that they put out. I'll be happy to post it tomorrow for your leisure and review heading into the weekend. But I thought it was really interesting because I never really thought about, as a practitioner, that they were lumping us together as dentists, but also individually lumping us based on numbers of prescriptions and how intimately they are watching the activity. So good news that we're slowly coming off the radar of opioid prescription contribution, but also just, a continued heads up that they are watching pretty actively. Another article that came out this week was related to a study that came out of the New York Medicaid claims, citing that the number of dental ED visits went up pretty substantially during the shutdown, which is not a surprise probably to most of us practitioners, because particularly in states like New York and California that had much tighter restrictions on when dental offices could reopen, there were a lot of patients sort of left in this middle place where they needed to seek care, but were unable to be seen in their local dental office. And so the statistical reporting coming out of that particular article noted that ED visits went up pretty precipitously in the 30% range for emergency visits, and they were attributed to dental causes. And that was tied into the time periods in which the dental offices were closed. So there is a lot to learn from that particular news article and research data point. Obviously, it's to highlight and appreciate when dentists became essential again and were able to reopen. Our role in healthcare management, both in our local communities, but also to help manage the patient population coming into the emergency departments. And it's interesting to note this because the Health, Education, Labor and Pension Senate Committee was starting to seek comment just this week as they're relooking at their pandemic act that they have in place that is, meant to deal with, and let me quote this correctly, the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Act is up for re-upping this year. And they're looking for some comments from different organizations and individuals as they start to model, adjust, create parameters, and what have we learned from the COVID pandemic moving forward for healthcare providers. So it's interesting that statistics like this are coming out to show how essential dental care is in a community, particularly in a pandemic situation, because we're able to alleviate some of the burden of our emergency room departments. So all of these things are starting to play together. I thought it was kind of an interesting correlation that these things are happening a little bit in the same time period. I do think coincidentally, but I do think interesting nonetheless. As we start to move forward in 2023 to look at both dental's role in preparedness for whatever the next pandemic may be, but also how do we well equip our communities to be ready to respond. And if I would be very lost if I didn't remind you one more time, the open comment period for the CDT code enhanced modifiers will be the end of this month. So if you have any desire whatsoever to impact any future changes in how we do billable services in the dental community, you really should get onto the ADA's website and find out how you can participate in that process. We do have a deadline coming up very soon. It will be at the end of the month. And Jeff, you'll be really happy to note that the sleep apnea code and sleep appliances has been officially approved in the CDT code book and will be official as of 2024. Lastly, one last thing. The ERC, or the Employee Retention Credit, has gained a lot of attention over the last couple of years, probably specifically over the last few months. In fact, I even saw a booth at Chicago Midwinter of a company who was marketing and trying to attract business to file their employment retention credits for the IRS. Now, this is a legitimate IRS relief opportunity for employers that meet certain criteria. And I'll be happy to post that for you if you haven't pursued the opportunity for an ERC for your taxable years 2020 and 2021. But please be wary. The ADA and the IRS have posted a lot of information about scams out there of companies that are trying to help small businesses and specifically dentists to try to capture this revenue from the IRS. Buyer beware. And with that, that's the news.
With that, we have a fantastic guest with us tonight who has done a whole lot in dentistry. And I think it'll be fun to get to know him a little bit. So, Chad, would you introduce our guest tonight?
Yeah, so Dr. Zuckerberg, I've seen his name around a lot. I reached out to him a couple months ago, and he's a busy man, but I appreciate him making the time for us this evening. But he's a 1978 graduate of NYU College of Dentistry. He owned practices in Brooklyn and Dobbs Ferry, New York from 79 to 2013. And as we were talking before the show, he's always been an early adopter of technology. He had PCs when PCs weren't really a thing, starting in 1986. And then he had fully networking his home-based office in 1996. His early adoption of technologies included digital radiography, CAD/CAM, and creation of a paperless office, and it caught the attention of industry leaders. So he's been writing articles and beta testing. The advanced technology in the home helped launch his son, who you all might have heard of, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and Mark's interest in computers. He's been married for 43 years to Karen, a retired psychiatrist. They have 3 daughters, Randy, former marketing director at Facebook, Donna, who received her classics PhD at Princeton, and Ariel, who's a partner in the financial firm in San Francisco, as well as 7 grandchildren. Dr. Zuckerberg lectures nationally and internationally on technology integration in the dental office. But what really, it caught my interest is that he's chief dental officer for Keystone Bio, and which is a biopharmaceutical company, as well as Viome, which we're going to talk tonight about. So we're going to talk about both of those. But without further ado, here's Dr. Zuckerberg, and it's a real pleasure to have you with us. I probably butchered your bio, but I'm not really good at reading, and I didn't memorize it. I apologize. So
it's pretty accurate, except for the number of grandchildren that actually changed as of yesterday.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah.
So 8.
8. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I'll go correct that right now.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, you just sent it to me on Tuesday. How could it not be accurate? No, thank you very much.
Hey,
I gotta ask first though, where in Brooklyn?
I grew up within walking distance from Midwood High School.
Okay.
And I went to Midwood, Brooklyn College, and took the subway to NYU Dental School.
Okay. All right. I only until I was 5, but we lived in Mill Basin for a while, and my grandfather had a dry cleaning store on Avenue U. So
my first office in 1979 was on the corner of East 31st Street and Glenwood Road. And after about 5 years, we lost our lease and relocated to about a block from the Kings Plaza Shopping Center.
yeah,
Right.
we passed it all the time on the way to my grandfather's store.
There you go. That's where we were for until 1990, when I sold that office. I ran 2 offices for 10 years because about a year after we got married in 1979, my wife got into medical school, and we relocated to Westchester County, and the commute to Brooklyn wasn't too kind. So we bought a home actually from a retiring dentist with an office in the house, a small office in the house. After about 5 years there, we put a 2-level renovation on the home, expanding the dental office into a modern, at the time, dental office. And from 1990 to 2013, I practiced exclusively in my home.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I always
nobody does
joke about
anymore.
that, but I don't know if I don't know if I could get away with it.
Yeah.
You're muted, JB, but it sounds good.
Well,
Sorry.
JB,
Is that a
Oh.
pro or a con when you practice near your home?
oh, it's a huge pro. Not
Yeah.
near my home, in my home. I mean, people
Yeah.
warned me that we'd be getting people knocking on the door at all kinds of hours and stuff like that, and that just didn't happen. And when there was a true emergency, and I remember back in the mid '80s, we had an ad in the local penny saver, and I had jury rigged this key system phone that rang behind our bed. It was in a little headboard. It had a very low vibration muffle on the office line, but I managed to hear it if I was awake. And the phone rang on a Saturday night about 3 a.m. And I think we were both up for whatever reason. And I answered the phone, flipped the guy out. I mean, he's like, "Whoa, is this the answering service?" I go, "No, you got the doc." He goes,
Yeah.
"Wow." Anyhow, in about 30 seconds, I realized he had a true, legitimate dental emergency. I mean, his face was swollen out to here. And he said that he just moved to the area. He didn't have a dentist. And the pain was so bad, he considered jumping out the window, but he only lived on the second floor and he'd probably only break some legs. And that would be even worse than the toothache. So he pulled out the penny saver, got me. Half an hour later at 3:30 in the morning in jeans and a t-shirt, I took a PA and saw a big non-vital abscess on number 30. And I pulled out a brand new number 8 round, didn't even bother with anesthesia because I knew it wouldn't hurt. And I was in that pulp chamber in about 10 seconds, and there was like a geyser of purulent sanguineous discharge coming out. And within like 30 seconds, he looked at me and goes like, "Oh my God, it doesn't hurt anymore," and stuffed some cotton in there, gave him about a gram of Pen VK that I had lying around to take right on the spot, and a prescription to get some more, and told him to call the office on Monday, not knowing if I'd ever see him again. I ascertained that he didn't have any allergies, but I didn't even do it, a written medical history at 3:30 in the morning on a Saturday in 1984. But over the course of the next 10 years, that guy wound up referring about 50 patients to the practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be your largest referral base.
I'm wondering how the hell does one person refer 50 people to a practice? That he must like walk into a room like a party with people he never met before, and shakes his hand and goes like, "Hey, I'm Zach. How you doing? Do you happen to need a new dentist?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you met my dentist?
Typical
Hey.
party fodder. Yeah.
When you're that impressionable, I'm telling you that may be the way it was happening.
And that internet thing is not going to happen for at least another 15 years. So you should probably take his business card and call him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just start handing out the penny savers.
There you go. Things have changed, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. Fast forward to 2010, and some guy managed to get through my receptionist to get to me, which was not an easy task. I mean, one salesman got through to me once by asking for Eddie, and my front desk figured it was one of my friends. And later she said, "That was someone you knew." I said, "No, that was a salesman." And she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And a week later, a woman called asking for Eddie, and she wound up hanging up on my mother. But she comes back, and I was between patients looking at an X-ray, and she goes, "There's a guy on the phone. His name is Howard Ferran, and he says you'll take his call." And I said, "Wow, I've heard of him, but I've never met him. But yeah, I'll take his call. I'm between patients, whatnot." And he's like, "Ed, you're a dentist." And I go, "Howard, I'd heard you were smart, but wow, now I'm really impressed." Anyhow, he was trying to become friends with every dentist in the world. And Facebook had just told him he couldn't have any more friends. It capped him out at 5,000. And so even back in 2010, I Facebook pages was pretty new. A lot of people didn't know about it, including Howard. So I said, hey, you set up your business as a personal profile. It needs to be a business page. Let me help you with that. So I helped him, and he goes, Ed, you got to write an article. Does my office need a Facebook page? And so that was in Dentaltown, and that was a big hit. A few months later, they had me write an article. What else are you passionate about? And I go, well, I'm not going to teach dentists. I'm good dentist, but I'm not going to teach dentists how to do crowns or, procedures or something like that. But I'd love to talk about technology, because a lot of us are fearful, about integrating technology in the office. So that was my next. And then people started calling and emailing, asking if I did speaking engagements. And the timing was perfect, because in 2011, even though we had 3 out of 4 of our kids already living in Palo Alto, we were still in New York. We had another child on the East Coast who was finishing up a PhD at Princeton. And the game changer for us was the first grandchild. And we were finishing up patients about 1:00 on a Saturday afternoon, and we got the call that my daughter in California was in labor. We got on the 7 p.m. Delta flight that landed in San Francisco at 10. And around midnight, my wife was holding the baby and looked at me and said, I'm staying. Are you coming? So
that was it.
That was it. Yeah. I mean, a couple of years later, we were a California resident.
That's great. And you don't have a place in New York anymore?
So that daughter with that first grandchild, who happens to be out here with us right now in California because it's his spring break, he'll be 12 in a couple of months. That daughter moved back to New York after a 6-year stint as the head of marketing at Facebook. She started her own media company and wound up moving back to New York. Produces Broadway plays. She's won 3 Tonys. She runs a media company. She has a Broadway venture fund. She's got a Sirius XM radio show. She's a busy gal.
That's awesome.
So we've got an apartment now on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and we visit, 4 times a year. And
that's great.
Yeah.
So tell us, you started off in technology, and that's how I guess that was your first breakaway from clinical dentistry. But what led you to what you're doing now? And let's switch gears. And what got you into the oral systemic connection?
So the companies that reached out to me for help with their startups were mostly technologically based. The first company I looked at back 11 years ago is a company called Breathometer that was analyzing hydrogen sulfide production in the breath. There have been various smart toothbrush companies, a smart mirror company, companies involved with various forms of robotics for dentistry. One that I'm very excited about now, that's going to replace us doing crown preps and things of that nature. AI interpretation of x-rays. I advise a couple of companies in that field, just cool stuff, and I've always been interested in technology. And I was doing probably about 15 to 20 lectures a year pre-pandemic, mostly study clubs. But the pandemic was like, hey, this could be my opportunity to ride off into the sunset, I've been doing this a lot of years, and there's a lot of grandchildren I love spending time with. I play competitive contract bridge. I'm a passionate photographer. Dabble at golf, with my 18 handicap. But I kind of was not doing much. I was doing a few virtual webinars. And then I got involved with Jeremy Krell. Jeremy, I had met at the Yankee Dental Congress about 5-6 years ago. He was kind of doing the same thing as me, advising a bunch of startups in the dental field, except he's half my age. He's just 10 years out of dental school and looking to do this full time for his career. And so he, along with a financial partner, formed the Revere Partners, which is the first venture fund for independent venture fund that invests solely in early seed and pre-seed dental oral healthcare companies. So I started doing a lot of diligence calls on a lot of companies that were being fed. And somewhere along the line, somebody introduced me to a company. I'd like you to take a look at this company. It's not a tech company, but it could have a big impact in dentistry. So I met with the team from Keystone Bio, founded by a St. Louis dentist by the name of Dan Sindelar, who's one of the original co-founders of AOSH back around the turn of the century. And, you know, the stuff that they presented to me in that first meeting was just like, wow, this is like, you know, I'd heard of P. gingivalis, and like most dentists, you know, we know it's a bad bug. But I didn't realize that it's the bug. And I didn't realize that it's connected with so many maladies. I think I've got a slide up here. I can show you. Let's see if this pops up. There we go.
Is that it? I'm sorry, I had to do it for you, Ed. Go ahead.
So every one of these maladies has already been linked clinically to the bacteria P. gingivalis. It's mind-boggling. And there've been over 50,000 research papers written on PG in the last 70 years. I'm sorry, I think it's about 10,000. 10,000 research papers on PG since like 1950. There's actually a meeting every 2 years of just people who work full time on the bacteria P. gingivalis. It's like crazy stuff, right? So, you know, when I'm listening to this stuff, I'm hearing how does it work? Because I think almost every dentist has, you know, either anecdotally, we know that there's a tie-in between patients, you know, with gum disease and with, you know, bacterial infections in the mouth getting sick. I mean, I've seen patients who refuse periodontal care, that we tried our best to get them to do it, but they really had really bad perio disease. And I remember this one guy who was about 37, his wife said, I don't even want to kiss him anymore, you know, and she basically dragged him in, and we just couldn't get him to go through with comprehensive care. And he died of a heart attack at the age of 42, 5 years later. Another woman I remember came in with a bad infection. She'd had a really poorly done root canal on one of her permanent first molars, and she happened to be 5 months pregnant, and she really didn't want treatment. I remember speaking to the obstetrician. Yes, treat it now, middle trimester, great time to, you know, we don't want her dealing with infection throughout the pregnancy. She took the prescription, you know, for penicillin that we prescribed to give her some pain and swelling relief, and called us up that she decided to wait till after the baby was born. Well, she lost that baby in like 7th or 8th month. I can't put my finger on it and say, you know, that there was 100% correlation between these infections and these incidents, but the scientists here show us that it's real. And I think part of the problem is we don't understand how it works. The researchers, for the most part, have been looking for something called a direct PG infection in organs like the brain. You know, Alzheimer's disease, hey, there's a correlation, right? Why can't we find PG in the brain? Well, we can't find it in the brain for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's an anaerobic bacteria, and the brain has got the highest oxygen tension in the body. No anaerobe is going to thrive in the environment of the brain. Secondly, the blood-brain barrier is blocking any bacteria, with the possible exception of meningococcus, which is why meningitis can kill you in a couple of days. So the bacteria can't cross the blood-brain barrier. But what the team at Keystone Bio found in their research is that if these arrows, that's an organism of P. gingivalis, and those arrows point to these outer membrane vesicles. Each organism of PG is pouring literally, hundreds and thousands of these toxic vesicles filled with toxic proteins called gingipains. When you've got inflamed gums and periodontitis, you've got open capillaries. These vesicles are traveling through the bloodstream, and they're getting to end organs like the brain. Those vesicles can cross the blood-brain barrier, and they do destroy neuronal function, neuronal activity, and cause dementia. In literally 100% of autopsied brains of people who've died from Alzheimer's disease, we found these toxic proteins of P. gingivalis in almost every brain. And in the liver, we found that the toxic proteins of PG, not the bacteria itself. The bacteria is very cushy and comfortable in the pocket. They love to live there and do their damage at the gingival level. But the toxic proteins in the liver inhibit glycogen synthesis. So if glycogen synthesis is not working properly, the pancreas can direct the body to produce the proper amount of insulin, but without glycogen synthesis working properly, we can't control diabetes because we can't control blood sugar. In the vessels, the toxic proteins cause weakness and increase permeability in the walls of the vessels. And then we know the body tries to repair these increased permeabilities with calcifications. So that's how the toxic proteins of PG cause atherosclerosis, leading to high blood pressure, heart disease, and strokes. So really bad stuff. It's, to say PG is the only, the team at Direct Diagnostics, they've done a couple of, I've done a couple of salivary tests of my own mouth with them. My own mom died 19 years ago of Alzheimer's disease, and I've got periodontal disease with high salivary load of P. gingivalis. That second one on the left, PG, that you can see is shot all the way up there, practically off the chart, is my PG level.
I know a good dentist if you need one, Ed. I just want to let you know that.
Well, Friday morning, like clockwork, I'll be back in my hygienist chair. She will scrape down to my toes.
There you go.
And as a matter of fact, the one on the left you can see is right before my hygiene appointment last June. And the one on the right is literally about a week later. So we've knocked everything down quite a bit, but that's only temporary. Those loads come back.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is are you using any other medicaments in conjunction, any antimicrobial therapies in conjunction?
I'm trying all kinds of things. These are blue light. Blue light has been shown to be antimicrobial. School's out on these yet. Let me just move ahead to, this is a really cool one. So what Keystone Bio has is they've got a monoclonal antibody. Now that monoclonal antibody has been revised from an original version that was tested in this Booth study in 1995 in the UK. Very small study, 14 patients, all with very high levels of PG. And in this study, all the patients in the study had scaling and root planing, followed by subgingival irrigation. 7 of the patients only got saline. 7 of the patients got the monoclonal antibody. In the 7 patients that were irrigated with saline after their scaling and root planing, levels of P. gingivalis returned within 3 weeks to previous normal high levels. In the group that got the monoclonal antibody, the earliest measurable detection of P. gingivalis in any of those 7 participants' mouth was 9 months. Crazy, right? We can eradicate this. We know we can. This group actually back at that school in London was looking for a permanent one-time, like a vaccine. So they were disappointed when it came back, and these guys didn't get additional funding, unfortunately. So, where we are now with that is that monoclonal antibodies in testing now in Australia, and we anticipate to market in 2 years. Could be a significant tool in the armamentarium of dental offices as an adjunct to period maintenance and scaling and root planing administered once a year to really push dentists into the forefront of, primary healthcare. It may be in the hands of dentists alone to really have a significant impact on numbers of cases of Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, digestive cancers, you name it. Almost every malady afflicting man, we are now finding we're tracing back to the mouth and tracing back to PG.
And Ed, I apologize. I know you said it was presented in the form of a vaccine. Is that how it will be brought to market, in the form of a vaccine, or is that still to be determined?
No, it's going to be a topical. It's going to be a subgingival irrigant that's going to probably, since it's not a permanent eradication in adults, it's going to probably have to be repeated annually, maybe even twice annually, along with scaling and root planing or perio maintenance.
What about using something like a perio tray or something to deliver it?
I was just getting ready to ask the same thing, Chad.
Do this. You say it's topical once every so often, and then something for maintenance.
You want a clean surface. The drug's going to be expensive. It doesn't need to be administered more than once.
Okay.
So one dose. So there's no need to do it over a prolonged period. And you want to get it subgingival. So it seems to me like the perfect vehicle to do this is the hygienist or the dentist with a blunt irrigation needle injecting subgingivally after they've done a procedure on patients who we've identified. Now, 50% of adults over age 30 have significantly high threshold levels of PG in their mouth. 83% over age 60. Now, just having it in the mouth doesn't mean you're a candidate. You got to have periodontal disease, and you have to have circulating levels of the toxic protein in your bloodstream, which will only be able to be determined via a blood test. So Keystone Bio has 3 products in the pipeline. They've got the monoclonal antibody for direct subgingival. They've got a diagnostic test to determine who needs to be treated by testing the blood. And they're also working on a vaccine to administer to young people before they've ever had PG in their mouths. A lot like we're, recommending Gardasil for HPV before our youths become sexually active.
Interesting.
So that's a couple of years away. Viome's got some really cool stuff that's out there now.
Do they, forgive my ignorance on this, but will they participate in the testing of individuals? Like, will we move away from traditional modalities of when folks come in, we have, 5 or 6 different data points that we assess to determine risk of periodontal disease and maybe some of the bacterial makeup. But we don't have definitive.
Absolutely. And Viome actually has that test now. And it's going to be rolling.
Interesting.
Out.
Okay.
It's going to be rolling out next month in April through a simple saliva collection. So, a lot of synergy between these 2 companies,
Yeah. I like that.
Associated, all the different bacteria with all these different conditions, and PG is in every one of these. So what Viome's got that's really radical and new is an oral cancer detect test from the saliva. Oral cancer we don't have anything like this now. I mean, this is 95% sensitive for oral and throat cancer with a simple salivary test. And that's like amazing. I mean, if you see something suspicious in the mouth, like a lump on the tongue or something like that, and you still have those oral CDX sticks with the wire little like Brillo pad at the end of them, you can scrape a sample, stick it in a vial, send it out, and get a little biopsy report. Those are 60% sensitive for the lesion that you actually scraped, assuming you got the right area. But what Viome's doing is a deep dive using measuring all mRNA activity in the mouth, measuring the microbiome, measuring fungicidal activity going on in the mouth. And Viome is coming up with a score that's identifying the presence of oral cancer from these biomarkers, 95%. So what's going to happen, they're pairing that with also other measures, other tests here. So this is an example. So a dentist will do send the patient home with a kit. That patient will spit in a tube in the morning when they wake up first thing, mail it off, and the dentist will get this report back about a week later. Well, the first thing you see on top here on this report is not detected. So this patient with a 95% degree of reliability, and this is not on a patient where, we're not even looking for lesions. Obviously, we're still doing our manual palpation, our visual exam. Those who are using Velscope are doing that. But this is like a screen, and who should be screened? Everybody. I mean, we know high risk people, older people over 50, smokers, drinkers. But basically, the new etiology is HPV. So
HPV, people don't know if they are carrying that.
Anyone who's sexually active, with multiple partners is a target risk for oral cancer. And so we're basically talking about testing everyone in the practice annually. And the dentist is going to get a report back like this. So not only do we find out about cancer, but we're also getting 6 other specific tests, high-level tests about like fungal activity, genocidal activity, dental health, gum health, breath odor management, and pathobiont activity, each one with a score, each one with recommendations, each one telling the patient what the risks are for having a suboptimal score. Like, for example, this sample patient has a fungal activity score of 34, and the report says the fungal activity score quantifies the abundance of cancer-associated fungi. So the ability of these fungi to chronically settle in the mouth depends on properties, host defenses, et cetera, et cetera. Chronic fungal infections occur when one or more species are left unchecked, allowing them to flourish. Our data show that increased abundance of the fungi assessed in this score are associated with oral and throat cancer. A significant increase in these species signals an opportunity to address a dysbiotic microbiome and strengthen impaired host defenses. And then we go on recommending. I mean, when I go for my physician for my physical, he listens to my heart, he does an EKG, he'll test my cranial nerves, maybe, a prostate exam. But the bulk of the time he spends with me is reviewing my blood work. The range is supposed to be X. These are all good, but this one's low, and this is what we need to do about it. Maybe, my cholesterol's high and I need a statin, or maybe my BUN's high and that might be indicative that I need to hydrate better than I'm doing, that kind of thing. The point is, we can correlate science, and when we show patients science, the patients have a better understanding and more respect for the dental professional as a clinician. And so bad oral health and dental health and gum health scores are going to make a patient more likely to accept recommendations for periodontal disease. bad fungal score might lead them to go on a course of antifungal therapy as recommended here. So the variety of things here in the report really raised the standing of dentists as primary care practitioners. And the number, and just being able to find this stuff early is huge, right? So here's the profit margin part of it. We've got a CPT code. We've got a pricing determination of $1,755 for this salivary test with no overhead, zero overhead to the dentist. Patient spits in a tube. What's our overhead? You got to spend about 20 minutes with a patient going over the report, which, by the way, can be done virtually. You have an hour free time in your schedule during a day, maybe a cancellation, or maybe you never got booked. Tell your front office staff, hey, schedule 3 biome follow-up consults based on their scores. Or maybe even take a half day from home and do a bunch of virtual calls with patients to go over their results from home. Each one of these probably generating about $500 for the office in profit. $1,500 in an hour to go on your computer and chat with patients from home, and not even thinking about the fact that it's going to lead to more treatment in the office also based on these recommendations. So this is really huge stuff. Billing for medical insurance is another thing that I could go on and on. What Viome's also got is from the oral microbiome. They've got an oral microbiome report that comes out of the salivary test. They're going to make personalized food recommendations to that patient based on the test results of the saliva. This is really cool stuff. This is bringing the dentist into whole body nutrition. So if the report comes back that they've got high oral volatile sulfur production, we're going to have them avoid certain foods like eggs and arugula. If they come back with high polyamine production, we're going to have them avoid tofu and soy milk if that's part of their diet. And if they've got high pro-inflammatory pathways, we're going to point them to certain superfoods that we want them to eat, like guava. Periodontal mucin degradation pathways are high. We're going to have them avoid certain highly acidic foods like lemon, lime, passion fruit, if those happen to be in their diet. So we can, through diet, inhibit the growth of bacteria that cause bad breath, balance their pH, optimize their glycemic response to food, and inhibit inflammatory activities. In addition, Viome has customized products, custom for the patient, oral lozenges for that patient, toothpaste for that patient, to the products that contain targeted postbiotics, prebiotics, antioxidants, polyphenols, specifically for that patient based on the results of their oral microbiome testing from the saliva. And what we can do is we can influence the growth of good, healthy bacteria and minimize the bad ones like PG. So we can't, Viome can't eradicate PG like Keystone Bio's monoclonal antibody will be able to do, but Viome can promote a healthy microbiome, which can minimize the effects of the of an unhealthy microbiome. And this is stuff that's going to be out now for dentists right now.
This is so great because this,
It's so good.
It's where dentistry has been going. So my background is I kind of got into the whole orosystemic thing through sleep apnea therapy. And, that's what kind of really made me in tune with this and learning about inflammation. And then that just brought me into this whole orosystemic thing, to understand that there are a lot of ways we can be treating disease other than the conventional, physical methods that we've been using. So I just appreciate you bringing a lot of this to light today and letting us see some of what's on the horizon.
I just, if I could look in my crystal ball and see 10 years in the future, my vision, what I hope to see, is the patient going for a medical workup. Maybe they've got a complaint, high blood pressure, blood sugar problem, diabetes, workup, arthritis, whatever that complaint is. They go to see their primary care physician. And the first thing that happens is the primary care physician routes them to the oral health specialist, because it's a pointless waste of time to try and do a workup and treat the patient for conditions which have their primary etiology could be coming from periodontal disease. And the physician's going to want to know that has been ruled out and treated effectively, much like a patient who's about to be, radiated for, post-cancer treatment has to go to the dentist because any bad teeth have to be removed to prevent the risk of osteoradionecrosis if they, God forbid, need a tooth removed after their, immune system has been compromised from the radiation. So the dentists I see, becoming, for some reason, I guess it was, back around the time when I started practicing, when dental insurance was born, people looked at it as, hey, this is great. People who never went to the dentist are going to be able to go to the dentist, going to be able to afford going to the dentist. But really, that was the start of the split. And of course, back then, we really didn't look at the mouth as being connected to the body. But the divisions of dentistry and medicine were started with that. There really is no reason for there to be a beast such as dental insurance. Dental insurance should be included in healthcare insurance. And dentistry should be looked at like every other medical specialty as a medical specialty.
Totally agree.
Amen.
So,
Well, and I like the thing that resonates with me a lot as I watch, the different slides is it gives us answers. There's a lot of times where we get questions from patients or we see clinical conditions. And to your point, Dr. Zuckerberg, we don't have the mechanism to give them answers to their questions. Like, we can only diagnose and visually do what we can see through radiograph or oral examination. But to be able to do a blood work type of analysis starts to answer, why do I have bad breath? Why do I actually have periodontal disease or not? Like, is this chronic? Is it not? I want to be able to provide those answers to patients.
Yeah, and now with like AI for digital radiographs, we've got companies like Pearl and Overjet, looking at X-rays and giving the patient an independently certifiable,
Correct.
hey, here's 4 millimeters of bone loss, so they were kind of quantifying them to the point where they don't need to take our word for it, or the old days when everybody trusted us, or now we've got some science behind it to show them, and I think this generation wants the science. They want the data. In the past, we said, hey, you need to come and get your teeth cleaned every 3 months. Why? Well, because you'll get gum disease when you get older. And so when I get older.
Would you agree with this? That I think that kind of the cool part about this is that it's also recreating that path for the independent dentist who wants to separate themselves from the corporate dentists that are out there doing the insurance dentistry, that are there to really be back for their patients the way we kind of were when we started our practices and really had a more personalized approach to care. And I think this type of therapy and this type of of a diagnostic acuity really gives us the ability to have that relationship with people again that we've kind of gotten away from in dentistry, and is the main reason that so many corporate dental entities have thrived. Right. is we've really reduced it to a commodity where we really can take a hold of this profession again.
We can. And I think Biome's going to be one of the leaders in this. And they realize that, as dentists, we want to do good, but we also want to do well. I mean, there's a reason why, with millions of dentists in the world, why there are only 10,000 bell scopes being actively used. Because we can't get paid. We can't get paid for that investment in a bell scope. But this is something that not only can we provide valuable information to the patient, but we can also have this be a huge profit incentive. This can be a tool that by itself can have dentists be able to say sayonara to PPO participation.
Yeah.
And go back to full fee for service.
Well, there's so much more to talk about here. And I again, just like last week, we have gone over, and one of the fastest presentations or conversations that we've had. And we do to allow everybody to go to sleep tonight over here on the East Coast. Unfortunately, we have to end, but I would love for you to come back, and we would love, all of us, to continue this conversation some more, because I think there's so much more to talk about here, Ed.
Happy to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's clear after tonight where your kids get their smarts from. It's Karen.
Obviously.
No.
I've always said that.
Hey,
100%.
Our goal on this show at Dentist in the Know is to bring passionate educators to the forefront. And it was very clear that you were very passionate about this. And that just makes my heart happy. But as we close, I want to share something else that you're passionate about. And you don't know that this is coming, but I saw this on your Facebook page, and this is what made me reach out to you. So as we close, I want to share two pictures.
Wait, he has a Facebook page?
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
But this right here is a picture that Dr. Zuckerberg took in Tanzania of the great wildebeest migration.
Yeah.
He talked about his photography, and I tell you, I was blown away. This looks like a portrait.
Wow.
And this next slide, these two, they just look like they're painted. It's such it's beautiful photography.
It's an unbelievable experience to see this migration. It's just thousands and thousands of unending wildebeest, and it's easy to just take a camera and point there. But what I really wanted to try and capture in this picture, and I don't know if it comes through, but it's the intensity and like the drive to survive. I mean, that's why they're crossing the river, because there's food on the other side, and the animals, are just like, throwing their body, risking their lives, crossing this, stampeding and trampling each other like there's one ticket left for that rock and roll concert, and they want that ticket.
Well, I just thought it was fascinating. It was beautiful, beautiful photography. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your energy. Thank you so much for your devotion. And I guess my closing comment to all of our listeners, whether it's tonight or whether it's in the future or on our YouTube channel or on our podcast, I just want to thank Dr. Zuckerberg again. And I want everybody to realize that you're not just a dentist, you're a physician of the oral cavity. And don't forget that. And there's such a huge connection. And as Dr. Zuckerberg and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, sometimes we are their only connection to medical care. So with that being said, I'll close with that and thank Dr. Zuckerberg one more time. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Good night.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody.
And that wraps up
another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.